Hello, this is Jason Clement, Technical Sales Manager at Isonas, and welcome to the Certification Training Module. This module is Basic Troubleshooting. Our course objectives are review some basic troubleshooting for common issues including network connectivity at the physical layer and above, trouble finding and connecting to devices on the network, and some common wiring mistakes and troubleshooting tips. Basic network troubleshooting. Make sure everything is properly connected. Check the switch LEDs for green solid or flashing lights. Flashing means that data is passing. Switches with PoE typically have a status LED indicator for that as well. Make sure your subnets are correct. Subnetting can be complex and programming a large number is going to have some errors. Remember that subnet calc that we went over in an earlier module? Make sure that you have the correct IP addresses for your subnets. Again, sometimes even IT administrators get things wrong. Check with the IT administrator that you are on the proper VLAN or that the VLAN you're on can reach the host machine. Again, VLANs can be complex depending on how they are set up. Duplicate IP addresses can cause weird problems of devices showing up and disappearing. If you don't have a DHCP server on the network, the IP addresses for the Isonas devices are going to default to a static address, and usually those addresses will overlap, causing duplicate IP addresses and odd problems. We'll also go over some basic commands built into Windows to help troubleshoot. Let's jump over to the command prompt and check out some of these commands. So let's go ahead and open a command prompt. In Windows 8, I'll go to my search icon, and I'll just type in CMD. If you're using Windows 7, again, you can just go to your search box, type in CMD to bring up that command prompt. If you use it a lot, just make a shortcut on your desktop. So if you want to quickly verify the IP addresses assigned to your machine, you can type ipconfig, ipconfig. This will give you some basic information on all your network connections. Here with Windows 7 and Windows 8, you'll see a lot of different connections, your wireless, your Ethernet, Bluetooth, etc. Typically what we're looking for is anything called Ethernet or local area connection. So we can see here my Ethernet 2 is my main connection on my network 192.168.254.50. Now if we want to see more information, at any time you can press the up arrow and it will cycle through your previous commands. If we do an ipconfig /all, this will actually provide a lot more information. So if I scroll back up to my Ethernet 2 connection, here we can see it provides a lot more information. Here it provides our physical address or our MAC address, provides our IPv6, provides our DNS address, and some other information within there. If we want to be able to test connectivity to another device, we can type in ping, P-I-N-G, and then the IP address or URL that you want to ping. So I can type in 192.168.254.150, and I know I have an IP camera at that address. So we can see that we got a reply from that address and the time it took to respond, which is either 2 or 1 millisecond. It's sitting right here on my network, so pretty quick. If we want to ping something out on the internet, we can type in www.isonas.com. This is a good way to check to see if your DNS is working correctly too. If you type in ping www.isonas.com and it cannot resolve the address because it doesn't have a DNS entry, then it will tell you that it can't resolve the address. But here it's resolving the address for isonas.com and giving us a response time of between 35 and 40 milliseconds, which is pretty typical when you're pinging something out on the internet. So let's say we want to do a ping on this address, but we wanted to keep pinging so that we can do some further testing and see how it affects. So if we ping the address, again 192.168.254.150, which is my IP camera, and do -T, this will actually ping the device continuously. So now I'll actually go unplug this device and we'll see it drop connection. So here our request timed out because I unplugged it. I'll go ahead and plug it back in and we'll see it come back up. So our device is fully rebooted back up on the network and it's pinging again. This is especially useful if you're having compile issues. You can ping an Isonas device and then run the compile and see how it affects the connectivity to the device. You can stop at any time by Control-C. Netstat will list all the active connections for your host. So it's just net, N-E-T-S-T-A-T. This will take a little bit of time to pull all those connections in. So here we can see the protocol that the connection is on, which is TCP. We can see the local address, the foreign address, and the state that the connection is. So if we look here at these couple of lines, we see an IP address at ports 7072 and 7073. These are C-subs that are running for DB Crystal, and we can see that they're connected to a device out on the network. If we look down here, we can see port 30001. This was our port that our call home was operating on, so we can see those connections are up. And then we see a myriad of other connections here. So we can see this device is connected on port 10001. This is most likely our IP bridge. And we see some other connections that are on my PC. This is an easy way to check all the connections that are on the host machine. ARP is another command that is useful. So this will actually list all the devices that your PC knows about. So the common command is ARP-A. So we can see the IP address and the MAC address of the devices that my PC knows about. So .18, .25, .26, .60, these are all Isonas devices. .150 is actually an IP camera on my network. .254 is my gateway, and 255 is of course our broadcast address. So if you're having issues and your PC is not seeing anything in plug and play, you can run the ARP-A command and see if your PC is even seeing those devices on the network. If it's not, most likely you've got a subnet issue or you need to change the IP address in the drop-down of the plug-and-play device. There are a lot of other commands that are built into Windows that you can use, but these are the most common ones that you can use for troubleshooting. The PowerNet will not power on using PoE. Check the jumper settings on JP1. The jumper should be off across 2 and 4, no effect, or across 1 and 3 to provide 12 volt DC on red and black. Do you even have PoE at the device? We recommend that you have a basic cable and PoE tester. Check the continuity of all 4 pairs from the device back to the switch. Again, we go back to having a basic cable and PoE tester. If there is an open somewhere, that is most likely the problem. Try a dumb PoE injector in the network closet. If you have PoE at the device now, it's most likely a switch issue, and consult your network administrator. Continuing with the PowerNet not powering on using PoE. Check with the IT administrator if you can try another port. If moving to another port fixes it, the original port could be bad or the PoE could be shut down. Okay, so I have PoE and my cable is good, but it's still not powering up. Ensure there is enough power from the switch. There may not be enough power for the PowerNet. Unplug the pigtail from the PowerNet. Something could possibly be shorting it. So I have enough power, the cabling is good, I unplugged the pigtail, but it's still not working. At this point, it could be a bad PowerNet. Try another PowerNet and contact technical support. The PowerNet will not power on using 12 or 24 volt DC. Check the jumper settings on JP1. If these are not configured correctly, the PowerNet will not operate. Use a multimeter to ensure that you have voltage from your power supply and it is the correct polarity. Typically, polarity is positive is red and negative is black, but you may have some power supplies with built-in leads that could have different colors. My jumper settings are correct and voltage is present. Leaving the pigtail plugged in, remove any other devices connected to it until only the power supply is connected on the red and the black. If this does not work, then swap out the PowerNet and call technical support for further troubleshooting. No devices are showing up in plug and play. Make sure that you have the right IP address selected in the drop-down menu. If you do not have the right IP address, it will be broadcasting on the wrong subnet. Ensure you are on the same subnet or VLAN as the readers. Remember, plug and play uses broadcast messages and routers stop broadcast messages. Verify with the IT administrator the network is set up correctly, or ask if he can set up a DHCP server for your devices. I cannot connect to the reader. Check your Windows firewall. You will need to turn it off or create rules for the ports DB Crystal is using. By default, any Windows Server or Windows PC will have firewall turned on. Check the subnet of the device and the host machine. If they are different, both devices must have a gateway address to communicate to the other subnets. Ping or tracer the IP address of the device. Check for duplicate IP addresses, especially if you don't have a DHCP server and you have not pre-configured the Isonas devices. They will revert to their static IP address and you'll probably only see a couple on the network. Unplug the Isonas devices and try pinging them again. Is it possible that there's another server up and running with DB Crystal that has CSUPs running? If you have the local server that the customer has provided and your laptop that you have DB Crystal loaded, you may have multiple CSUPs running on there and different devices connected. One of the basic items for troubleshooting is the network tab in DB Crystal itself. So here we can see all of our CSUPs and we can see the controller mode and status. On my system, I have all of my readers running in local mode. On the bottom right here, we can see the color code for the different statuses. Blue is host, green is unlocked host, red is in lockdown, yellow is emergency or inactive, meaning that it was connected but it's lost connection, gray is disabled or standalone, purple is of course lockdown mode, and if it's purple and green, it's in its unlocked mode and local. If it's in a question mark status, it's just unknown. Under the CSUP, if you have one or more devices, but not all the devices underneath that CSUP in emergency inactive status, try pinging a device or checking to make sure that it has network connectivity. You can also start and stop the CSUP to try to reestablish connectivity, but most likely if it's just one or two devices under the CSUP, it's an actual communication issue to that device. If all the devices underneath the CSUP are inactive, it could still be a network issue, but it might be a CSUP issue. You just might need to stop and start the CSUP again and check to see if the devices come up. We can also do basic troubleshooting via the monitor application. So here on the left hand side, I can see I had some controller failures, these alarms that are highlighted in yellow here. I can see an unlock schedule that kicked off, and I can see other items within here. So it's a quick troubleshooting to see if a door was unlocked, maybe somebody put it in a lockdown mode, and you can go through the log and see what happened within the system. We can also go over here and just do a quick admit. This will just unlock the door for its predetermined time. If you're having an issue with an electric lock that is not unlocking correctly, you can come to the monitor application, click on the door, and just click unlock. This will set it on an unlock schedule. That way you can troubleshoot and make sure that the voltage is going to the correct location. When you're done, just go ahead and set it back to its normal schedule. Now let's take a look at EDK issues. Check the jumper settings on the PowerNet. If the jumper settings are not correct and set that the PowerNet has an EDK connected, it will not work. Check to ensure the EDK is powered. There's a red LED on the unit that should be steady. Check to see if the green LED comes on when a valid card is read. If the green LED lights up, the EDK works, but the lock does not. Remove any lock wiring from the EDK and test it again. Always ensure that you're using the proper suppression for your lock. If one of the LEDs is flashing amber, contact technical support. My electric lock is not working. Is the door supposed to be unlocked? Is there a valid card read? Is it on an unlock schedule? Are the jumpers on the PowerNet unit set correctly? Is there sufficient power for the lock? The PowerNet can provide 12 volt DC up to 600 milliamp in perfect conditions for all your external devices. The external power supply must be correct as well. Check the electric lock wiring. Most can work with 12 or 24 volt DC. Ensure it is wired for the proper voltage. Is the proper suppression installed? Is it set to admit without unlatch in the software? This will show an admit in the software, but the lock will not actually unlatch. Card rejects. Is the person supposed to have access to the door? I did a large install and change out, and people were complaining they couldn't get into certain rooms. Turns out they were not supposed to have access, and that was the reason they were upgrading the system in the first place. Is there a scheduled holiday in the system? Remember, holidays can override normal schedules. Are the correct permissions set for that person? In the monitor program, does the card reject show an unknown person? If you see the person's name, it's a permission issue. If you see unknown, then it's most likely a card issue. Are they using the correct badge? Sometimes people have multiple badges for different buildings. Going back to our monitor application, let's take a look at some of the different card reads that we'll see. Here I have a typical admit. It shows my name, my card number, it shows that it's an admit, and my image if I have one. Now I read at a door that I don't have access to. We can see it's a card reject. I see my name and my card number. This means that it's a permission issue. So if I'm supposed to have access to that door, then you'll have to resolve the permissions. If I'm not supposed to have access to the door, then the system's working as it needs to. Now I read a card that's not in the system at all. So we can see that it's a reject, and it's an unknown name, and there's no badge number because it doesn't know basically what it is. So if you're getting these, that means the card's just basically not programmed into the system, and you'll have to go in and actually program it in. Or, like we discussed, sometimes people have multiple badges for different jobs or different buildings or whatever it may be, and they may just be reading the wrong badge. Going back to our DB admin program, if we take a look underneath one of these devices, we talked about an admit without unlatch. So if you're running these in host mode and you check this admit without unlatch, you'll see admits in the software, but your electric lock will never unlock. Typically this is used when you're using the PowerNet reader controller in a special case, maybe to trigger something else within the system or something like that. Typically you don't want to check that because it will just cause you problems within the system. Other things to look for. When all else fails, sometimes you just need to reboot. This could be restarting the CSUP services, restarting the Windows server, or just power cycling the PowerNet or the IP bridge. If necessary, hard default the PowerNet or IP bridge and start over. Again, sometimes Windows just needs a reboot as well. Help, my door is open, but it shows closed in the software. Is there a door contact connected? Or do you just have the blue and the black wires shorted? Let's review our course objectives. We reviewed some of the basic troubleshooting for common issues, including network connectivity at the physical layer and above, checking our cabling, making sure that we have PoE, being able to ping the device. Troubleshoot finding and connecting to devices on the network. This is typically a subnet or a VLAN issue. Some common wiring mistakes and troubleshooting tips. Number 1, make sure that you have your jumper set correctly on the PowerNet. If you're using external power, make sure you have the correct power, and if your lock is not working, make sure the lock wiring is correct and that you're using the proper voltage. Thank you for attending this course, and we hope it was beneficial to you. Have a great day. Where did it go?